Hey Ken, this is Greg. It's Valentine's Day, February 14th, the year 2022. We covered two short chapters. We're really heading down the home stretch here. We're going to be finishing this book this week. And we're coming to the conclusion really soon, the climax, the second climax. So I want to just refresh your memory, see if you remember this or not. Let me find it out here. Where did I put it? That's not it. That's not it. There you go, right there. All right. I had this out there earlier, and I don't need the hearts. I put Valentine's hearts background for my kids on all my things today. However, anyway, talk about this. We're quickly coming to the climax here, and the very first sentence in the book. Page 1, sentence 1, starts like this, and you probably remember it. Let's see if I can, there you go. When he was nearly 13, my brother Jim got his arm badly broken at the elbow. All right, as I'd said early on in these lessons, that's kind of a bookend, all right? Harper Lee mentions that in the very first sentence of the book, and we don't know until the next to the last chapter or so what in the world that meant. And also for the first part of this book, the first 11 chapters, Jim and Dill in particular, and Scout to some extent, they were just obsessed with this idea of Boo Radley coming out of his house. And of course that's a bookend as well. They go hand, the last, Boo Radley coming out and Jim breaking his arm at the elbow, they kind of happen simultaneously, so to speak. So anyway, those are the things that Harper Lee has put out there to give us an idea of what is going on, and just to bring back to our remembrance the things that we're talking about. I had also put this, and I'm going to get rid of this as well, the color. Two climaxes in this book, To Kill a Mockingbird. We've already had this first climax. Atticus Finch and Tom Robinson and Bob Ewell met in the courtroom. Of course, we know what the outcome of that was. But also we got coming up the Finches. And notice I put the Finches. It's not just Atticus. It's Atticus and Jim and Scout. But it's more Jim and Scout than anything. And Bob Ewell and Boo Radley. And of course, they're going to meet out there on the walk home from the Halloween party. And Bob Ewell's going to attack them. So anyway, we had some reading today. And there's I've got a page here that I want us to go over. These are the points for today's. Also, I have typed up, and I'll be right back. I want to get it. I have typed up a page here. This is what I use every year as we get towards the end of the book and we're getting close to the test. I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I have 16 deeper thinking things that I want the kids to discuss, to talk about. I usually put them in either groups of 4 or teams. I split the class in half, and one half debates against the other. I put my stool that I'm sitting on right in the middle of the room, right where my camera tripod is right now, and I let one side answer a question, and then the other side gets to have their time, for rebuttal or to add to it, or to take away things from it. But I've got a list of questions. I would like to find some way to put these out on Google Classroom for you, so I don't have to read them all here and take up more time later in this lesson. However, the two chapters today, they were very short chapters. I think one was 5 pages, one was 6. So we got them read in class today. And after we read, it was actually before I got to school today, but after I read, I put these on the board for the kids for notes. First thing was the bookend events, which I just went over. Jim breaking his arm and Boo Radley coming out. That's the beginning and the end of the story. And I mean, there's more to it than just that, of course. But that's kind of what the whole story is framed around. Those two things, even though the title is To Kill a Mockingbird. Secondly, Jim's sensitivity to harmful things. At the very beginning of this first chapter today, Scout is about ready to squish, I should say, a roly-poly bug, and Jim stops her. And you can see, once again, I talked about this the other day, the gap between Jim and Scout as far as their thinking and their maturity levels. Jim is still really, really upset about the Tom Robinson decision, jury verdict and whatever, and he's starting to put together adult thinking here. He has figured out how society, at least where he lives, he has figured out how society works, and he's just very upset that Scout is going to kill this harmless bug, which in his thinking was the same as Tom Robinson getting convicted. This is before he even knew Tom Robinson was dead. All right, he hadn't heard this yet. And so he's developing some sensitivity to more mature things. And, this follows Atticus. What did Miss Maudie say? Atticus quit hunting because he figured he had an unfair advantage over the animals. And he just didn't think it was right. And so he quit hunting years ago, 3 decades ago. All right. Atticus and Calpurnia drove out to the Robinson house, and Helen Robinson wasn't there immediately. But they picked up Jim and Dill on the way there, and so Dill got to relate the story to Scout when they got back. But in the movie, it's fairly simple. When she sees Atticus, she faints. Well, as I told the kids in class, we came up with the idea in class today, she would naturally think something was wrong if Atticus Finch would show up. There's no reason for him to come out there right now, unless something has turned up. And when Atticus didn't say anything, she figured something really, really bad was up. And of course, they had to tell her. This wasn't in the book, but obviously they had to tell her that Tom was dead. They had to tell her the story. So that was her reaction. Of course, in the movie, it's a little bit different because that's where Bob Ewell spits in Atticus's face, not where Atticus went out and Calpurnia went out to tell Helen Robinson that Tom was dead. You can imagine how devastated Helen Robinson already is. She has no one at all. Now that Tom is in prison, how are they going to eat? How are they going to live? And then to compound it with that, her husband is now gone on a permanent basis. So you can imagine how this would affect her. Third point, it's actually the fourth point on here. Very telling, and it just once again shows how the town is thinking. It says that the news of Tom Robinson's death was news for maybe 2 days, and then people just moved on with their lives, and they didn't think about it. But what the people, what in the book, what were the people's comments about Tom Robinson getting shot as he was trying to climb over the fence at the prison? Well, to them, it simply proved that Tom Robinson was guilty. Why would he escape if he thought that Atticus Finch could really help set him free? That's their thinking. This was nothing more than, we talked last week about confirmation bias. This is all the information they needed to know in their own minds that all that they had thought all along was true. Tom Robinson had to have been guilty. Otherwise, he wouldn't have tried to escape. And of course, they don't think any deeper than that. The man had been railroaded into a conviction. He had been served a grave injustice. And how depressed he was. That was obviously, he was depressed. But anyway, as we talked about the other day, Tom Robinson got shot. He had 17 bullet holes in him. And again, this just proved to the people that Tom was guilty. The white people I'm talking about. The next point was Mr. Underwood's editorial, which was very, very simple. Simply written, and it was outstanding from the standpoint that Mr. Underwood did not like blacks, did not like them at all, didn't want to associate with them, didn't want to have anything to do with them. He made that point very clear. And yet, here was a man who was very, very prejudiced, set in his own mind against blacks to begin with, but to him it was still a simple matter of a grave injustice. And Scout couldn't figure it out for a long time. Scout's still the black and white thinker here. between her and Jim. Jim was, again, he's digging deeper into the thought processes, into the psyche of his community and his town, and he's beginning to understand things. To Scout, it was all real simple. He was given a fair trial by 12 jurors, brave and true, and he was found guilty. What's there to think of? Why is Mr. Underwood writing all this? But then she said a little bit later, I'm going to jump down to point number 7 here. Then she said, I finally figured out what he was saying. And point number 7, Tom was a dead man the minute Mayella Ewell opened her mouth and screamed. That's one of the questions that I have. It's usually, sometimes as a test question, I put an essay question on my test. And that's one of the questions on here. It's the very last one on this page, actually. Tom was a dead man the minute Mayella opened her mouth and screamed. Atticus knew this. Atticus, again, go back in the book, Atticus at least knew that Tom, it was impossible he was going to win his trial in Macomb. On appeal, he thought they might have a good chance. But, the deck was stacked against Tom Robinson all the way around. There was no way 12 white farmers were going to give him a break. And as far as Scout was concerned, from her thinking now, once she figured this out, it was inevitable that Tom was probably going to be convicted of the capital crime, and that he had no chance whatsoever. He's probably going to be executed. That was probably what her thinking was all about there. Go back to point 6. Bob Ewell said 1 down and about 2 to go. I asked my kids about what he meant there, and of course the 1 down was Tom Robinson. He's now he's been killed, been shot, and everything. And I asked them who they thought the other 2 that Tom was thinking about. They got it fairly quickly that they thought it had to do with Atticus, and it does. But they couldn't figure out who the third one was. They gave me all kinds of answers. And the answer, as we're going to find out in tomorrow's reading, it was Judge, the judge. And for whatever reason, Bob Ewell was upset, maybe because the judge seemed to have sided with Atticus, and it really embarrassed Bob Ewell when he was in court there. And he didn't like the way the judge handled the case. And Bob Ewell probably saw once again that everything was stacked against him. And of course, society, in his mind, was out just to mess over all the Ewells and to take advantage of their ignorance and their poverty and whatnot. And so he's thinking that get rid of these 3 people. Of course, he didn't have anything to do with Tom Robinson getting shot. That the guards did that, but he had everything to do with Tom Robinson being in that place in the first place. So Bob Ewell's statement. 1 down and about 2 to go, and then Bob Ewell will be happy. Of course, you know how the book ends, the story ends. He's not going to be happy at the end. Number 8 here. I'm pretty sure we talked about this in our earlier lesson when the 3 kids went to the to the Radley garden. They were going to go and they're going to sneak in and try to look in the window or the shutters or whatever. And they ran away, and Nathan Radley shot a shotgun and chased them off. Jim lost his pants, and he showed Jim and Dill and Scout showed up, and Jim didn't have his pants on. I'm sure you remember that part of the story. But Atticus let it slip. And he knew all about that. He knew what was up. He knew those kids were the ones who had caused the disturbance in the Radley garden. He knew all along, and as I talked with my kids during class about this, I just pointed out to them, I just gave them some examples. I said, guys, not only did Atticus know, but every adult who was out there talking, they probably knew what had really happened. So, again, here Atticus he lets it slip that he knew everything that they had been up to. Number 9. The hypocrisy of Scout's teacher. This is an amazing part of this book, I think. Miss Gates, she encapsulates the hypocrisy of Macomb. She just sums up the entire community of Macomb in a nutshell by her observation here. In this story, it's show and tell, or current events, they call it. Current events at school in Scouts class, and kids are bringing in stories. Well, there's one kid, Cecil Jacobs, brings up about old Adolf Hitler. He brings up about Hitler, and Cecil says he's prosecuting the Jews, and she corrects him as persecuting. And so they have a classroom discussion about that, about how wrong it is. And of course, Miss Gates, she says, oh, it's dead wrong. The Jews are good people. They're very productive and very helpful, and they're very religious people as well. And so she talks to the class about them, how awful it is how Hitler treats the Jews. Okay, this really confused Scout, and she didn't talk about it in class. I'm sure she thought she'd get in trouble. She tried to talk to him about Atticus, but she couldn't talk to him about it. So she finally went and talked to Jim, and Jim tried to tell her about, well, it's a terrible thing, to persecute people. And Scout, she just persists. Well, why do people do it? And here's what she was really thinking about. She told us later in the chapter. When Miss Gates was leaving that trial, she made a comment, and I don't remember the exact comment right now. It says, basically, she was talking about the blacks. She said, we need to put them in their place. They're getting out of their place. And of course, right now, and we need to do something with them. And of course, the thing that she is talking about Hitler about is the exact same thing she is guilty of. She is discriminating against people based upon, their background, their ethnicity, or whatever. And in reality, that is pretty much the attitude of most of the people in Macomb. It's not everybody. It's not Miss Maudie. It's not the Sheriff Hectate. Obviously, it's not Atticus. But it's the attitude of most people. They've got this whole thing, this segregation thing. They got it down pat. They know what they want. They know what they believe, and they know that's the way it's supposed to remain in their society, in their culture. That no black person will ever be counted or considered as an equal to any white person, and that's the way they like it, and that's the way it's going to be. And Miss Gates sees nothing wrong with that, even though she sees everything in the world wrong with the way Adolf Hitler was treating the Jews. Let's see if I can find my place. There it was. All right. So again, that just kind of that's a small picture of the hypocrisy of Macomb in general concerning blacks. The last point that I have here, and I left this with my students today. Why did Harper Lee have to kill Tom Robinson? I think it's necessary to the plot that he dies. The story is not going to end the same if he just goes to prison and he doesn't get executed, because it was a capital crime. He was there awaiting his execution. In the meantime, Atticus could appeal and stuff like that. But if the appeals don't work, then Tom is going to get executed. He didn't. You could say he got executed by the guards, even though Tom had something, to do with that. He was trying to escape. But why did Harper Lee have to kill Tom Robinson? The simple thing is, the simplest answer is, it just wouldn't have been the same story if she'd let him live. And it certainly would not have been the same story if the jury had acquitted him. In fact, it would have blown their societal system, to pieces. All right, a couple things. I'm just going to read a couple of these things off of here, and you can be thinking about them as well. I'm sure you'll have good answers for them. Let's see. I'll read, I think, 5. Number 1, explain why the people in town are upset with Atticus about being Tom Robinson's defense lawyer. Why does Atticus defending Tom make the people upset when other lawyers have defended blacks in court before, but that didn't upset them then? Okay. Number 2, why was Tom Robinson in a no-win situation with Mayella Ewell at her house? Why couldn't he just have pushed Mayella out of the way and just stayed there to explain to Bob Ewell? And why was simply running away a bad choice? 3, Explain why Tom Robinson could not have possibly committed the crime against Mayella that he was accused of committing. This is definitely going to be a test question. What does the title "To Kill a Mockingbird" mean? Explain its significance. On all these questions for my students, I'm looking for more than just a simple answer. I'm looking to use the things that I put on the board to give a full explanation. And the last one, explain this statement. It's the one up here. Tom was a dead man the minute Mayella Ewell opened her mouth and screamed. All right, and again, I'm not, for my kids, for my students, I'm just not looking for a simple one-line answer. I'm looking for a fully developed answer that would put into their answer the things that I have discussed frequently going through here. So I'm going to leave you with that. There's still a number of questions, and maybe I can read some more, tomorrow. But I think that's going to be it for today. We're getting to not the next chapter, but the chapter after this next one is the coming home and the getting attacked by Bob Ewell chapter. So, all right. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good evening, Ken. Have a great day tomorrow.